cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in a cage, I'ma let out the. Wake up, get out the sheets. We came for one man, forget about peace. We take the west side, check out the east. I'ma put them in the cage, let out the.
Goodness. That's insane.
Beg, please get on your knees. Came from the jungle, up in the trees. I got a few tricks up in the sleeve. One wrong move, I'ma let out the.
And go.
Did you hit the button? I didn't hear you hit the button.
I always hit the button, Jake.
We just got this buggy back from powder coat and it is slick. This gloss black looks really nice. It's got a whole bunch of really cool features to it. Really stoked. We got the motor stuck in just as we got it back, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff missing right around here that's at the powder coat area getting put back together right now. So here in just a minute, we're gonna take the axles and we're gonna start putting those up underneath here, getting the 4 links and everything else set up, start hanging the shock mounts and everything else. But first, we had to see what this motor was gonna look like.
Big time, no man, diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Running up the number, that's a lot of crime. Try to take it from me, must be out your mind. I'm big time, lot of slime. Smoky in the air, that's a lot of pine. Pockets running over with the dollar sign. Try to take it from me. I don't need rags, I just need more bags. Bought the trip to the store, said I need more splash. On her tippy toes, she could sneak right past. I'm the man of a dream, she asleep on my abs, that's a hall pass. I don't need a hall pass. Watch out for the snakes in the tall grass. Not the one to play with, that's a raw fact. Say a hard head, make a soft, ooh.
Check out that bad boy right there. That thing is beautiful. I can't wait to get this whole thing done. That gloss black and that purple just pops. Check that out. We got all the plumbing situated on it. So we've got all of our plumbing run. Obviously there's some components here that still have to be hooked up, but all the plumbing's run. Got the methanol tank mounted, radiators mounted, fuel pump. That's for the methanol. It's a little methanol pump and solenoid. Underneath here, we've got our trans cooler, battery. The exhaust is all together. Trailing arms. In a couple days, this thing will have everything together and we'll be ready to fire it up.
Big time, number 9. Diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Running up the numbers, that's a lot of crime. Try and take it from me, must be out your mind. Oh, I'm big time, lot of slime. Smoky in the air, that's a lot of pine. Pockets running over with.
There's definitely cows on the runway.
Gonna need to move those. So we're in the neighbor's field, and Tuner Lane is gonna fly his plane in and land right here.
So what do y'all think about Dyno Day? You excited? Oh yeah.
They didn't want you to pet them, I guess.
No, and they're all off the runway. That worked really well.
There he is.
I was big time. Diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Running up the numbers, that's a lot of
Whee!
grind. Try and take it from me, must be out your mind. Oh, I'm big time. Lot of slime. Smoky in the air, that's a lot of pine.
Our tuner's cooler than yours.
Wasn't too bumpy of a landing.
That first bump was pretty good.
Well, it's hard to tell because the grass is so tall. There's pretty good humps out there.
Yeah.
So, hope I can get out.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Fuel pumps are already up. Replace that fit.
I did.
That up to 43.5.
I'll do my best.
See you, Lane.
That's too cool, man. We got a whole lot of work done on this buggy right here. This is going to be called Tantrum, and it's definitely earned the name because there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been difficult for us. I mean, so we go through and we spend a lot of time trying to come up with all the details and make sure that everything works properly and everything. But, you know, there's just stuff that I don't know about a Ford motor, stuff that you know, it's normal stuff. But like, you know, I'm an LS guy, so I generally do with a lot of LS. I've done a lot of Chevrolet big block stuff, but just not really done much with the Ford. One of the things that kind of ate our lunch a little bit on this thing was the distributor. If you look at the way the distributor is on this, the distributor sits up here in the front. Obviously it's a Ford, but with these heads, it takes the intake manifold and actually lifts the intake manifold up. And the problem is that the distributor actually hits on the intake manifold and you can't set the distributor all the way down. So we had to take this thing apart, and if you look right down through there, you can see where we had to take the intake manifold and cut a section out and then TIG weld another piece inside there, basically a mirror image back down, just so that we could get the distributor to set all the way down inside where it's supposed to go. You can see there's a clearance issue right there. Another thing that was kind of weird is with that tall style deck, if you look right here, it's hard to tell, but if you look right here, there's a gap because this head again is taller, so it sits off of the block, and we ended up with a gap between the intake manifold and the block. And what ends up happening when you have situations like that is you start calling around, and of course nobody knows, and it's a really odd scenario. So it's not like an LS where you've got 40 guys that have a part that fit it. You have to find the one or two guys in the world that have the parts to make this thing work. And lots of time on the phone, lots of custom research, and you know, trying to figure out what parts work with this thing, but ended up coming out really good on that stuff. So tomorrow is dyno day, and as always, you know, we're getting everything prepped and ready to go. And behind me you can see an absolute monster. This thing is totally cool, man. The blue just pops. We've got these gigantic knuckles, this huge steering assembly and everything sitting right here. It's just a beast, man. Like, everything about this buggy just came out super clean. It's looking really good. Check out this. This is really cool. I like this. All right, I'm gonna turn this on. And the Holley is designed, we've got this thing wired so that when you click the ignition button, fuel pump and everything kicks on, and you can see the screen coming on. It turns on, and bam, there's your gauges. Now what's cool about this is we've got it programmed so that whenever you're cranking the buggy, it doesn't try to turn on all the accessories and kill the amount of power that goes to the battery. But we do have overrides, so if you click this button right here, all of your fans come on. So let's say you're out four-wheeling and you're whooping this thing down and she gets a little bit hot. You can basically stop, you can hit the fans button, it'll turn on the electric water pump, it'll turn on all the fans, and just sit there and cool everything while it's sitting there stopped. Transmission fan, blower fans, all that stuff all turn on at once, so that you can basically keep everything cool in between runs, like if you just need to cool everything down. But I want you to take a look at these tires real quick. That is ridiculous. Like, that is ridiculous. I mean, that is, you could take your entire arm, a softball would fit inside there without a problem whatsoever. These things are cut all the way down to the cords. You can actually see where the guy who cuts these things, when he runs his cutter down through here, his groover, he just runs it right on top of the cords all the way across. They were able to remove 50 pounds per tire in weight just by grooving these things out, which is really awesome. But I don't want to spoil the surprise all the way because we don't have all the tires on. But here in a second, you'll see this monster with all the tires on at full ride height. It's going to be a beast. In the last video, people were trying to hate on us because it was difficult to get gas into a trail rig. That couldn't be farther from the truth, but I want to point out that y'all are running out of things to hate on, because every time we turn out one of these buggies, it gets lesser and lesser and lesser about actual things and more and more and more about like little petty stuff. And this one right here, if you can't put gas in this, you just need to go onto the house. And if you can't put gas in that green buggy, or you have problems putting gas in that green buggy, you need to go onto the house. All you got to do is just flip that jug up, put it right there on the top of that green buggy, you're good to go. If you can't figure that one out, you're definitely an internet troll.
These quick disconnect steering wheels are kind of bad about getting stuck. Squeeze a little bit of this W40 pt2 spray. Much better.
The buggy sitting behind me, named Tantrum, has some really unique things going on. First of all, let's start off with the axles. It has 7-ton military axles from an MREP. They're called Meritors, and these things started off at 1,900 pounds. We have Chromoly housings that drop the weight down a ton, build aluminum hubs, and that gets it all the way down into the 800-pound range, which is what we're basically building all of our Dana 80s at. Except for this thing has a 12-inch ring gear with a 2-inch pinion shaft, and it has the planetary outers, which means that it can take any type of abuse that we can put through it. Now, coupled to that, we've got a set of these big 46 USD Stickies, and we knew because we had that big of a tire that we need something that was going to be able to take that abuse. Now, from there, going upstream, we've got 1480 drive shafts that go to an SCS transfer case. From there, we've got a TH400 with all the goodies in it. It's got the billet case from FTI. Then coming into the engine, this is something that's very unique for us. We've actually never done a Ford motor before, but this is our very first Ford engine. 447 cubic inches of Ford power. This thing has a dart block, Brodix heads, it's got a tall deck on it, and all that's made specifically so that we could run a ton of boost with it. We've got a Procharger that's crank driven, bolts directly to the front of the crankshaft, so we don't have to worry about any belt slippage or anything like that. It was very unique because we ended up having to take all of the accessories and flip them around the opposite direction because we're running off a PTO shaft that comes off of the crankcase. So basically off of the crank of the blower. So basically all of the accessories are turning the correct direction, but it looks to be backwards inside the chassis. This thing's making huge power on the dyno. It was fantastic to see something like this go, and it revs super high. It's really impressive to see in person. All this is wrapped up into our Ride Series chassis. It's our newest chassis out. And what we did in the back to make all these big components and everything fit, we actually cut it off directly behind the seats and then retubed it back in the back so we had enough room for the swing of the planetaries and wrapping up these huge shocks that are on this thing. It's got a rad flow suspension all the way around with our Busted Knuckle Series trailing arms. In the rear, we've got 3-inch 6-tube bypasses, and in the front, we have 2.5-inch 5-tube bypasses, and then we have 2.5-inch coil carriers all the way around. So it's got a top-notch suspension. Now, to wrap all that stuff up in the interior, we went with one of our Signature Series trail dashes. We didn't want it to look cartoonish or anything like that. We didn't want it to look like a car. We wanted it to look like a very tough vehicle. So when you look at the dash, it really speaks volumes because you can see the tubing coming through and it looks really, really strong. We've got a Holley digital dash inside there. It's waterproof. It's got a touchscreen interface, so you can go in and change your tunes on the fly and you can check out all the different parameters. We've got a Hurst shifter handle that's sitting right up on the top of the shifter itself, and that actually controls the rear steer. So not only is it a shifter handle, but it's a rear steer that hooks up to the Busted Knuckle remote rear steer kit. So you can actually have an electric rear steer kit anywhere in your vehicle and then run just 2 lines down to the back, and it's all controlled via electronics. Now this is a trail rig. It's meant for just riding around. It's got a big fuel tank, 23-gallon fuel tank. And the coolest thing about this whole entire rig, in my opinion, is that it has a full exhaust system. I love the fact that you can hear the blower whining. You can really hear the air pulling through the system. It's all stainless, TIG welded from front to back, and it came out really slick. With all that extra power, we knew that we were gonna have problems keeping these tires on the wheels. So we ended up going with some custom 17-inch double beadlock aluminum wheels. The story behind this buggy is a really cool one. I was sitting here one day and I got a phone call from a guy who was talking with Timmy Cameron and basically was in the market for a buggy, and Timmy actually had recommended us to build the buggy, which was pretty honoring, and we were pretty excited about that. The gentleman came to us and said, hey man, I want you to build a buggy, but I want this thing to be outlandish. I've got this crazy idea. I've got this huge Ford motor. I want to put this huge supercharger on it, and I want to make it just absolutely ridiculous. He wanted to be able to drive it around on his farm and some private land that he has. He doesn't plan on doing any racing with it or anything like that, but he basically wanted to be able to go out and just beat this thing mercilessly and not have any failures. And because of that, we knew that we had to go to set planetaries, just because the amount of power that we're putting through this thing with this big of a tire, you know, the planetaries take a lot of stress out of the drivetrain. So it just so happens that I had a set of planetaries what I was going to actually use for my race rig for this next couple seasons. But business kind of got in the way and I didn't have the opportunity to start racing again, so I figured best if these things got back out on the circuit and we could actually test them out. So we ended up selling the axles to them and selling the whole project. And the way that this thing came together, I just couldn't be more proud of our team and everything that they've done. Every single piece on this buggy is just a work of art, and we're super proud to have it. The Tantrum name came from like this kind of crazy deal. We were actually sitting there talking about the buggy on camera, and if you watch our very first video series, we're talking about the buggy, and we actually got a phone call from him, and we were like, hey man, we need to know what to call this buggy. And I was like, Matt, what do you think we should call it? And he was like, dude, I think Goliath would be an awesome name. So we started talking about it, and we just deemed it Goliath. And then afterwards, I started talking to the client, and he was like, man, I don't think we should call it Goliath because, you know, Goliath got, you know, jacked up by a little rock, so we probably don't need to call it that. He says, I think we should call it Tantrum. So he ended up calling it Tantrum, and that was kind of the way the nickname and everything for the buggy came about, and that's kind of the story behind the buggy. And hopefully we'll get a bunch of videos with this thing because it's just too awesome not to be out there getting some footage of. Super high horsepower, big tires. I mean, this thing honestly looks cartoonish whenever it's driving around. Like you're just sitting there looking at it, and it starts backing up, and you can see every single lug kind of slapping the ground as it's backing up. It's really something that turns a lot of heads.
Woohoo! No more buggy in here. Check out this bad joker.
All right, so we got this thing all loaded up, ready to go to the gynecologist. Big tires in the front and little tires in the rear. This hurts my feelings because these are brand new, unused sticky tires that I had for a build that I was gonna do. And they still have the little titties on them. And we are about to roast these things off on the dyno. But the problem is we can't use the big tires on the dyno because this gap right here, this gigantic hole in between each tire, is too much for the dyno, and it is going to rattle the dyno half to death. So we want to be respectful of our dyno's feelings, and we don't want to beat it to death. We want to make sure that it survives for another run. I'm not a Ford dude, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that thing, it's impressed me so far. We'll see what happens. Time to see what this Ford buggy will do.
Jake, what, we've been here for like 5 minutes? You're already
Yeah, but
out of
nothing's
the buggy?
broke. Nothing's broke.
Oh, okay.
I'm just improving.
Ah.
Just had to switch some rear steer stuff around because I can't drive it. I've always driven left, turns the tires left, and this is left, turns the buggy left, and the tires go the opposite direction. I've almost wrecked it twice. Goodness. That's insane, man.
It's a lot of whip out.
I might be a Ford lover after this.
Oh gosh.
Plenty good record? Yeah. Good.
The stickies aren't so new anymore.
Woo, getting close.
Sucked all the way inside. That boot literally sucked all the way inverted inside that thing.
That'll do it.
That's wild.
We learned nothing from the Gold Rush down at Izzy.
I mean, I know not to do that on, like, you know, a gap. So I took the air filter and butted it up. So if the air filter was in here, it would not have done it. That's insane. That's wild. Here. That's there's your boost. Well, thank God the blower drive wasn't broke. We were all freaking out. That was cool looking though. I mean, it went from like nice and round to starfish.
Yeah, I can't see it from here. All the bars are in the way.
I can't believe it's open air.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, think about how much air has to be moving to take that 5-inch and suck it close.
You ever seen tests with blowers like that? You'll see it'll get like 30% of its air from the outside edges. It doesn't come straight into the inlet. It circles in like that.
That's wild. That's cool.
You ever see those radius ducts that they're on the front of blowers?
Yeah,
Turbos?
yeah.
That's why.
That's
Huge
insane.
difference in the inlet.
So what you're saying is we're about to see a really big number.
I don't know, maybe.
$659.
Woohoo! Dang. You should have seen your face, dude. That was awesome.
I
Wow.
was like, it's still revving.
Oh, man.
Nice.
7 hours later, most successful dyno day ever.
Yeah, this is actually a really successful day compared to what we have been doing. Putting a little more compression in the back here where it was bottoming out. You could definitely see it when it landed. It bottomed out a little bit in the rear and threw the front down. So we're gonna try to control that energy a little bit sooner and see if we can't make it land flat. Shocks dialed in really well on Tantrum. The customer really liked it. The color, the sound, everything was great. Next, we got to finish up this buggy so I can get back out on the trail.